Looks like we are live. Am I correct?
I believe so, yes.
Excellent. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the August 13th North Clackamas School District's board.
It's just about.
Just about what? Sandra, are you saying something to me? No, she's frozen. Okay. All right, we're going to get started here. I want to first say welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. We're excited to have anyone joining us because this information is important for our school district. In addition to that, I will say happy left-handed day, because that's what today is for some people. I'm not left-handed, but you know, I always find it interesting for left-handed people. So let's go ahead and get started with our native land acknowledgement. And we decided that our vice chair would always do that. So vice chair, are you ready to do that?
Yes, now I am.
Excellent.
Okay. We acknowledge the land on which we sit and which we call the North Clackamas School District. It rests on the traditional indigenous lands and village sites of the native peoples of the Kalapuya, Chinook, Malala, and Clackamas. We take this opportunity to offer gratitude for the ability to learn, work, and be a community on this land. And we offer thanks to the original caretakers of this region. We recognize the historic policies of colonization, genocide, relocation, and assimilation that affected Indigenous and Native families, both past and present, and that will affect those in the future, and honor the resilience and revitalization of our Indigenous and Native communities. We pay our respects to the elders, both past and present, who have been the stewards of this land throughout the generations.
Thank you for that. First thing we have is approval of our minutes. We have 3 different sets of minutes to approve. So I will open the floor to approve the minutes for July 2nd, 2020.
McVeigh, move approval of the July 2nd, 2020 minutes.
Thank you. It's been the motion has been put on the table. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Director Perez. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none. Roll call, all in favor. McVeigh,
Aye.
Bauer,
Aye.
Benaloga,
Aye.
Way,
Aye.
Perez,
Aye.
Schradel.
Aye.
And I think I got everybody, and I say aye also. Next, open up the floor for July 16th, 2020 minutes. Do I have a motion?
Benaloga, I move that we approve the minutes from July 16th, 2020.
Excellent. It's been moved that we approve the minutes for July 16th. Do I have a second?
Bauer,
Director-
second.
Director Bauer is a second. She beat you, Perez. Okay, roll call for our votes. Schradel,
Aye.
Perez,
Aye.
Benaloga. Benaloga.
Aye.
There we go. Bauer,
Aye.
McVeigh,
Aye.
and I am also aye. Thank you.
Oh,
Last-
Sorry, I don't
Okay,
think you
sorry,
called me.
Way. Did I miss you, Way? My bad. Way.
Yeah, that's okay. Aye.
Excellent. Thank you for catching me. Unanimous. And we got one more set of minutes to approve, and that will be July 30th. I hear a motion.
Way, I move to approve the July 30th meeting minutes.
Excellent. Do I have a second?
McVeigh,
Benaloga,
second.
second.
I heard Benaloga first. Benaloga gets a second. All right. Way, we'll start with you this time.
All right, aye.
McVeigh,
Aye.
Bauer,
Aye.
Benaloga,
Aye.
Perez,
Aye.
Stradel,
Aye.
and I'm also aye. Thank you, guys. All of our minutes have been approved. We've been working hard. Lots of meetings. Consent agenda includes employment changes, policy revisions, and Oregon Community Foundation grant. Do I hear a motion on the floor?
McVeigh, move approval of the consent agenda.
Excellent. I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Bauer, approve.
Excellent. That's been approved. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none. Way,
Aye.
McVeigh,
Aye.
Bauer,
Aye.
Benaloga,
Aye.
Perez,
Aye.
Strado,
Aye.
and myself is aye. Thank you, guys. We are right on time. Cindy, are you ready for our community request?
Yes, I am. We have
Take the time on it, so we must have a lot.
we have 4 this evening.
Excellent. That's great. I love it.
Our first one is from Jesse Newell. Jesse states, I am once again advocating for the CDL option to be offered simultaneously with a hybrid model, even though there will be additional costs to offering both. Is there a way to offset the additional costs by utilizing the IAs, support staff, and teachers who are at high risk, 50% teachers to 59% support staff, and those considering leaving, 31% teachers, 7% support staff, to teach and support the CDL online for the full year? By offering both, you will be meeting the needs of the entire community. Another issue is that PACE will not cover liability related to COVID illness. Is this still being determined? Schools cannot open without a shield from likely lawsuits, educational leaders say. Will you make this clearly known to the parents, and will the parents have to sign a waiver in order to have their child attend school? What happens to the child that does contract COVID-19 at school? Who will pay for the tests of that child, parents, siblings, everyone that came in contact with that child from the school bus to the classroom? Who will cover the cost of a parent missing work? Who will cover the medical costs of that child or others? What is the likelihood and percentage of COVID-19 spreading from one asymptomatic student on a bus to the entire school? If a first grader who is asymptomatic gets on a bus with a kindergartner, a second, a third, fourth, and fifth graders who now unknowingly have come in contact with COVID-19, as the entire class, staff, and teachers have, and then they all go home, the risk seems too high. Will there be a leeway in the compulsory attendance with a reference to policy JEA in regards to COVID-19 and parents keeping their children home for safety reasons? I once again advocate for CDL to be offered simultaneously with a hybrid model. The second is from Megan Story. Megan says, I would like to advocate for the CDL option to be offered the whole year for parents who may not feel comfortable sending their kids in person when it is deemed safe to do so, like COVID high-risk parents like me. Beaverton School District is accommodating parents in that exact situation with their CDL model. My daughter needs to be connected to her school with her peers and have more teacher interaction than the 100% virtual model can provide. But I may not feel comfortable sending her in person when it is deemed safe to do so, as I am considered in the high-risk category for COVID. Will the district find a way to accommodate those in high-risk categories who want the CDL model, but not comfortable with in-person classes and don't feel the 100% online model will fit their child's needs? Our third community comment this evening is from Karen Hudson. Karen says, I have been a parent in this school district for 9 years. My oldest is about to enter 9th grade at Clackamas High School. He was in an early intervention IEP and then an IEP from kindergarten to present. My youngest is 6 and finished kindergarten at Spring Mountain and is entering 1st grade and is going on a 504. I am their grandmother, Oma, and Mama. I fought long and hard to get custody of these boys and support them to thrive as young boys, men, and citizens in our community. Both, as I have stated, have special needs. I am concerned that my kids seem to be forced to go to school if and when they decide to implement the hybrid model. I am 64 with many underlying health concerns and am their only parent. I'm single and we are thriving at home. My oldest was going through an emotional crisis before school stopped being in person, and now he is even keeled and thriving. Same with the 6-year-old. Except for learning. In learning, they are very, very much special needs. I have chosen the year-long option and have no security that we will be picked as a family out of the 550 spots. While it's not the absolute ideal for us, the online learning option through each one's school seems like it will stop when you go to hybrid. And then what? You will force them to go to school and put them and myself at risk, and we can't risk that. We have to have an online option that is available to all of us that are choosing to be safe and healthy. I cannot put the burden of this risk on the children. I could not live with myself and ask them to live with thinking that they put me at risk. They won't do that, and I won't put them in that position. I want to beg you not to do that also. We need to have an online option within the district, the online option for the school online, keep their rights for special ed resources, and help keep that intact. Regardless, it requires more of me than anyone else. I run 3 businesses from home, run my staff, keep money flowing, and work to keep the kids even keeled. I need your support to keep us supported with the kids' education. Please give us options for security, for knowing our kids and special ed kids will continue to learn and thrive in our homes if that is what we need to do for the best and highest good for our family, which you all know in turn is the best for the community at large as well. I do not want to put anyone, teachers, staff, parents, kids, etc., in the position to be at risk or to bear the burden of risking those they love. Thank you for listening. Please take action for us all. And our final comment tonight is from April Bianconi. April states, good evening. First of all, I want to thank Matt for staying and helping the district with the difficult tasks that have been created by COVID-19. I cannot imagine having a new superintendent during this difficult transition. And I also want to thank the board for their dedication and service to North Clackamas School District. Speaking on behalf of nearly 1,000 classified employees, I should state that April is the OSEA president. We do not envy the excruciating decisions that the district decision makers have had to make these last few months and will have to continue to make in the future. OSEA and NCSD share a rich history of collaboration and problem solving. The reason we have been so successful is the respect and consideration each of our teams share. We are fully aware that because of this pandemic, difficult decisions need to be made. Jobs will be lost. Flexibility and patience will be required. Employees may be temporarily repurposed to new jobs. We have heard overwhelmingly from our members that for laid off employees, continuation of health insurance is their most pressing concern. Single parents shared their stories of children who have serious medical conditions and are in the middle of a treatment plan. We have heard from employees who have had important and necessary surgical procedures canceled and rescheduled during the pandemic, only to anxiously wait to hear if their insurance will continue long enough to have the procedure completed. Continuity of care without lapses is a genuine concern. We ask you to consider extending benefits for our employees affected by layoff. As long discussed in bargaining, we have a common interest in attracting and retaining excellent employees and have invested significant resources into the salary and benefit schedule to achieve that goal. While layoffs may be necessary, it is also necessary to develop and nurture the mutual relationship. When NCSD is able to call these employees back, we want them to be invested and return to service. What we have heard from our members is that they want to come back. What we have been told is that many feel that with unemployment benefits, they can hang on until they receive that call. What many of them can't do without, however, is their health insurance. We don't want to lose high quality and dedicated employees to other jobs and/or industries. I would also like to add that even though this will be an added expense for the district, I would suggest that at this time the district is also saving money. Buildings are closed, buses are not running. These are saving fuel, maintenance, and overtime for employees. We have not driven 500,000 miles that we normally would be transportation. Practically speaking, if we really want to retain these highly trained employees, the cost of benefits will help with that. It costs approximately $3,000 to $5,000 to train a bus driver. There's also a great deal of training and searching for the proper person to work in the difficult positions from the care and Sabin Early Learning Center. Nutrition services positions are difficult to fill and retain qualified personnel. Speaking from an empathetic standpoint, providing 3 months of insurance may provide employees the time needed to finish procedures and treatments, consult with their physicians regarding next steps, and shop for insurance for the long term if this closure lasts past November. I believe these good faith efforts by the district now will help retain employees in the long run. The district embraces, encourages, and emphasizes its employees to utilize an equity lens when developing perspectives. While we understand the practical reasoning behind the decisions to determine which groups will be affected by layoffs, we think it is important to also recognize the implications and impact those decisions create. Some layoffs might disproportionately affect people of color and non-native English speakers. While a continuation of health insurance doesn't negate these unintended effects, it definitely mitigates them. The NCEA contract provides for 3 months of continued coverage for licensed staff during a layoff. Certainly classified employees, many of whom work primarily for their health insurance, deserve the same. We are all trying to do the best we can during this crisis with the resources available, and we do understand and appreciate the significant financial investment we are asking for. We want to do everything in our power to continue to serve our students. Please help us continue our commitment to the district and to our students. Thank you for your time and for hearing our story. That concludes this evening's community comments.
Thank you so much, Cindy. I also want to just say thank you for everyone who submitted a comment, and just for awareness, it is your right, it is a necessity, and it is our accountability when you submit comments. We also received individual comments. I don't want to dismiss the fact that we've received a lot, and we really, really appreciate the comments that are coming through. If you want your comment to be read here, you must submit that to Sandra Henderson. That is a different way of submitting comment versus just sending us individual emails. So just for clarity and education, if you like your comment to be read here, you have to specifically send it to our secretary, and it has to be submitted during the time period listed. All right, moving on. Thank you so much for that. We're moving right into our next agenda item, which is the policy revisions. I will turn it over to Tiffany Sharman. Are you there?
I'm here. Good evening.
Hey, hello. How are you doing?
I'm well.
Good. Good to see you.
Everyone, good evening. We have policy revisions this evening. Thank you for taking action on those in consent. It's much appreciated to keep moving our policy work forward. Tonight I have in your board packet 5 policies and 1 AR for your consideration. I'm not seeking action tonight. These are for discussion. So of those 5 policies and 1 AR, the reason why the AR is in your packet and not in the supplemental materials is because it is an AR that will require approval when we take action at the next meeting or when you're ready. So of these 5 policies and the 1 AR, I'd like to really highlight tonight the first in the list. That's GCB-DAA. And that is a new policy related to COVID-19 related leave. This is, of course, in response to the pandemic that our community is facing. There's new federal law, and then there are also temporary rules from the Oregon Bureau of Labor and Industries that require the school district to provide leaves. There are new kinds of leaves for staff. The policy itself is optional, I'll tell you that clearly, but we want to make sure that in every manner we're supporting our staff in whatever way we can. So we're taking up OSBA's recommendation, and the policy review team also wanted to send forward this particular policy. It is specific to COVID-19, and there could be a budget impact. Whether or not we adopt the policy, though, there will be that same impact because it is a right afforded by both federal protection and the Oregon Bureau of Labor and Industries. So I bring that just to highlight for you that that is in the packet. The other policies and AR are revisions of existing policies. I'm available for questions on any of them, should you wish.
Okay, everyone, just so we can be clear about questions, if you have a question, I can see all of you guys. So if you just want to raise your hand, then I'll go ahead and acknowledge you. Come on, Tiffany, you're doing a great job.
Hey, we have a good policy review team. Thorough work. That team is good.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll bring this back for action during our next meeting. And in between now and then, I just ask that the board pay attention to the wording in there, make sure there's nothing that we want to continue to have questions on or something like that between now and the action of actually voting them in. Cool.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, we have Educational Delivery Model 2020 to 2021, and our presenter is Superintendent Underback. Hey, Matt.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I'm going to share my screen here. And I think, can everyone, Lieber, are we good there?
Yeah, I can see everything. I just can't see everyone. So if there are questions, if you can use your hand raise, or when Matt takes a break, we'll do a roll call just so you all can get your questions out.
Excellent. So this is going to be a similar presentation to our two previous board meetings. I've got my great team with me tonight, and we're each going to take portions of the presentation tonight. We're going to move through some of these slides pretty quickly, as you've seen them now 3 times, and probably spend most of the time tonight on the more detailed information that we have on our instructional models, the schedules, etc. So with that, our agenda tonight, I'm going to share with you Superintendent's recommendation. It has not changed since 2 weeks ago when you saw that. We'll quickly review the district direction and guiding documents. And in there's an update on the health metrics as well. Shay will spend some time going through those educational delivery models, looking at social services, a little bit around athletics. Cindy will share with us the operational planning and some online resources, and then I'll bring us to a close. So tonight, our recommendation for the board to take action on really has 5 parts to it. We're asking the board to adopt comprehensive distance learning as our instructional model through at least November 10th of 2020. And then within that, that we would transition then to the hybrid learning model at some point after consultation with relevant parties, the school board, health authorities, the health matrix, etc. We're also asking to establish a temporary 1-year virtual online program for 550 students in grades K through 12 to be called the North Clackamas Virtual Online Program. That is a requirement for us to open that program with the Oregon Department of Education, is that we specify the name, the students, and the grades. I'm asking for your authority tonight to be able to adjust the adopted calendars as we are likely going to need to change some of the work days, professional development days, and seek retroactive board approval within 30 days of me doing that. And then finally, I'm also seeking your approval tonight that should it be necessary to establish physical distancing and other public health related requirements on school district property. And those would be following the Oregon Health Authority, the governor, and Oregon Department of Education's recommendations. So a large recommendation, a large motion tonight is what we're seeking. Again, our decision-making is focused on our district direction, the equity lens, and our strategic plan with those 5 guiding principles, values, guiding our work. In addition to that, I will turn it over to Chief of Staff Shireman to talk about our guiding thoughts and some of the health matrix.
Absolutely, thank you. As North Clackamas has continued its planning in response to the pandemic, we've continued to hold these guiding thoughts central to the planning: low rates of virus transmission, safety and care for people, standing ready for with multiple educational delivery models. I want to share with you all that while teams have been meeting since the middle of March and planning, you'll note the snapshot there in the top of the slide. Our groups are getting larger in discussion. Our groups are meeting more and more frequently. I would share that in the past 2 weeks, we have more teams meeting, larger breadth in the school district, and these continue to be our guiding thoughts. There's no loss in these groups. While they're very focused on the education of children, they recognize that virus transmission is of concern, and they're working to stem that. So tonight, I'm also sharing with you the health metrics. I did not know that I would ever use the word metrics as much as I have in the past, maybe 10 days. These are fresh. These are fresh Tuesday. We saw changes somewhat buried in documents and had to pick through to really get to the salient pieces. So what we're sharing here, we've seen it change. And I just want to highlight for you that guidance changes. This is the current guidance that we have. The metrics required here on this particular page are what a school district needs to consider if they're considering in-person instruction for all students in all schools. So that's what this slide is really referenced to, is moving away from a comprehensive distance learning to all students, all schools in a district to move to in-person learning. You'll notice in the first box, these remain the same as last week or last time we spoke. A county needs to be at less than or equal to 30 cases per 100,000 over the past 3 weeks. Test positivity needs to be in place at less than or equal to 5%. You'll notice third here, there also have to be no confirmed cases of COVID-19 among school staff or students in the past 14 days. It seems somewat sensical and logical that that would be in place, but was not something previously listed. And then you'll notice so those are essentially the same metrics that we talked about last time, with the addition of no one in the school having had COVID in the past 14 days. You'll notice though the box to the right, and that is for a school district that draws 10% or more of its students or staff from another county. The school district needs to consider the metrics of that county. So for a school district like North Clackamas, while we have the majority of our employees live in Clackamas County, about 67% of them, and 96% of our students reside in Clackamas County, we have 26% of our employees living in Multnomah County. And therefore, we're going to also need to consider Multnomah County's metrics when considering opening the school district to in-person learning for all students, all schools. Okay, so that new green box is important to be attentive to, and for us, that would be Multnomah County. We do have residents of many other counties and the state of Washington as employees in particular, though none cross the 10% threshold. Actually, would you mind going back? I think it's important to also just share as reference so that people know where we stand today. Clackamas County has had approximately 32 to 33 cases per 100,000 over the last 3 weeks. And the test positivity has been 3.7 to 5.2. So that's kind of the range. In Multnomah County, however, there's been approximately 55 to 63. So that 30 number in Multnomah County has been closer to 55 to 63. And test positivity has been at a low of 4.5% and a high of 5.9%. So there's some reference there for everyone if you'd like to consider what these numbers mean in reference. This next slide are metrics that are in place for when a school district is able to consider bringing in smaller groups of students. Okay? So the first box there is relevant to bringing in small groups of students. That can happen even if you don't have the cases in place, or you don't have the test positivity in place. You can bring in limited in-person instruction for some specific groups of students when there's been no confirmed cases in the prior 14 days in your school among staff or students, and when you have some safety measures, very specific safety measures in place. So I want to surface that. That is something that the metrics now allow, though at this time, the recommendation continues to be comprehensive distance learning for all students at this time. And then the second box refers to when a larger group of students, particularly kindergarten through third grade students, could come in and be serviced prior or receive in-person educational services prior to the full student body in the school district coming back. So I'm pointing out here, first slide, all students, all schools. On this slide, there are some metrics and pieces in place where smaller groups could access instruction when it's determined to be safe to do so.
Great, thank you, Tiffany. I'm going to pause there. Are there any questions for the board at this point? From the board?
So I'll just run through the roll call really quick just so I can see. I see you, Wei. So what's your question?
Thank you. My question was around whether or not we're getting alerts from the county if a student or a family member in our district gets tested or tested positive. I guess my question's around that communication loop. So, so I guess how does that work? Are we coordinating with the county or coordinating with families or both to see, who has tested positive, who has been getting tested? Just wondering how the district would find that out.
Sure. The district works through the Oregon Health Authority, and the Oregon Health Authority is assigned Clackamas County's health authority for us to work with. So we work with the county officials there, and we take our notification of confirmed cases from the county public health department. I, to be fair, am not well versed at the moment on if we're receiving information about students at this time. I suspect that we are not, and that will start when school starts, that we would start being alerted and in a loop there. I just have not been involved in that planning, and I'm not sure that we have anybody here who's been at that granular level, but it's certainly something we can research and make sure that you have a response to. As for staff, similarly, we receive that information from the Oregon Health Authority. Also, though we have had staff members alert us to suspected cases or that they had been tested, and keeping their supervisors up to date, I guess you could say. Mark Moser, I'm not sure if he's on the call here, might be able to share a little bit about the plans we have in place for notification. Is Mark here?
I'm here, but I'm struggling with the mute button.
Got it.
I got it. Yeah, we've come up with I don't have it with me right now, but we've come up with so David Cruz is probably your best person to answer these questions. And I've been trying to work with David. We've been working with the nurses and Cindy Panko, administrator in special education. And we have a mapping process for what we do when a staff member comes back or we think is possibly coming down with COVID. And the nurses are the ones that diagnose that. And then we have a process for HR to get involved, isolate the person, of course, when they are at work, and then advise them of leave. This would be working with Cindy Panko and the nurses to give and they report to the health department of Clackamas County. So David would be the one, because your question was really more, how do we get told if somebody is, out there and it didn't come to our attention? That would be something I think David Cruz could best answer. I can't speak to that myself.
Thank you. Yeah, I think a little bit of investigation around that would be really helpful. I'm also just concerned about families or parents whose English might not be a first language and who might not have this information on how to report, where to go to. And if this is one of the state's metrics for reopening, or just looking at cases in the county or for school districts to reopen, then I think it's a really important metric that we shouldn't, just gloss over. And I'm not saying that we are, but I just think we need to have a little bit more of a fuller plan to figure out how are we identifying those individuals and, making sure that they're also getting the care, right, that is needed for them. So thank you.
This is Superintendent Utterback, and I will chime in. My experience is it really is a two-way street. It requires, the tracing and of infections require parents to report, and it also requires the health authority to notify us when we may have a student that tested positive that they were aware of. And it really does, when we look at previous contagious outbreaks, whooping cough, measles. It is a very collaborative effort between our nurses passing information to the health department, as well as the health department passing that information to us.
Thank you.
And I'll just chime in really quick. So many of you know I work at SCI. We've been working with OHA on testing. So there is specific dollars going to culturally specific contact tracers. So we probably need to get connected with some of those folks. It is a two-way street. And so to the public, I will say, this is not the time to not tell your full truth. They need to know everywhere that you've been in order to be able to communicate effectively and make sure that we're all safe at all times. So there is opportunity here for us to obviously get more information on how we can communicate better, but there's connectivity and dollars that go specifically to contact tracing through the OHA department. And there is culturally specific contact tracers that are being hired as we speak. So we definitely probably want to get connected with those things. Director Wade, does that answer your question? I mean, I wrote notes on what we need to kind of get more information on, but does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Cool. Director Bauer, did you have a question?
I just wanted to be sure I'm understanding the metrics, because earlier, it was 10, case rate was less than or equal to 10 cases per 1,000. And now this 30 is for specific groups. I was just trying to think, what is the reason behind that? It's so that we can get smaller groups back into school.
It is. Yes. I think that the intention here in particular, at least the stated intention from the Oregon Department of Education, is to recognize who's disproportionately impacted by maybe not engaging fully with online learning. And often that would be a student with a disability, a student who's learning English, an English learner, language learner. And so there are attempts at the state level to find ways to be able to bring in small groups of students who could benefit from very specific kinds of instruction. This also might be a student who needs occupational therapy, and there's particular pieces that maybe there'll be instruction by the therapist to the parent. So that's the intention here with the first box on this slide.
Okay, I just wondered where they got the number 30. And again, it's going to be a decision that is down the road for us though too. I mean, we're committed through November 10th or 11th. So we wouldn't be doing this, even if the metrics change right away, we're not moving immediately. Correct?
Correct. Our current intention today, and we know that things, have changed in this, but I'm fairly confident we will not be returning to large student instruction in our schools till November 10th. What this top box on the current slide does allow for limited in-person instruction when a county or counties are not within the metrics. And we're really talking groups of 10 or less. So we're not talking significant numbers of students. And it is, as Tiffany pointed out, it is for targeting students that maybe need an assessment done, targeting instruction for potentially students with disabilities or English language learners. but groups of 10 or less. And it is less than 2 hours a day.
Thank you for that additional information.
Thank you. Director McVeigh, did you have any questions?
I do. I'm confused on the bottom right box for K through 3 and the previous slide, and what is the difference?
What, between this slide and the previous slide,
Yes.
what is the difference? I might need my team here to point out.
Yeah, I believe that we copied the wrong box here on this slide. In order to bring all students back, it is 10 students per 100,000, or sorry, 10 cases or less per 100,000. And then this slide here, I just caught that. And then this slide here, this bottom box right here is the exception for students in kindergarten through 3rd grade. And that metric is 30 cases or less per 100,000.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good catch, Tori.
Good catch, Tori.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. And interestingly enough, it's directly from the flyer. So we might want to give a little feedback to the organization.
Hey, I want a finder's fee then. Donate it to NCSD.
Yeah. So again, just to really make this really clear, all students 10 or fewer cases per 100,000. K3 30 cases or less per 100,000. Small groups of 10 or less, you can do that without meeting any of the numbered metrics, but you still have to meet those 3 boxes there. So there's now 3 levels.
Thank you, Director McVeigh. Director Benaloga, any questions?
I just had a twofold question around testing. I was on that Clackamas County forum they had for school board members. And maybe somebody knows this answer. So 2 quick questions around testing. What is our availability of testing in Clackamas County, especially once we return to school? Are there enough tests available? And what is the time between testing and getting that result? What kind of lag time are we looking at?
I do not have the answer.
I
So
don't have
can
the
answer
answer
this
to that either.
part. I'm sorry, I can answer the second part. So most testing, you get your results back within 72 hours, and that's an OHA testing sponsored group, and there's a lot of free testing around the state.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to our.
I didn't get everyone, Matt. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Director Perez, did you have any questions?
Question on the hybrid model. If at any point, once it is safe to do so, we move into in-person classes, less than 10. Are we, and you may be touching on this here shortly, are we going to be doing some type of screening too for those children that are in person, like when they get there, check their temperature, anything like that, or anything along those lines?
Yeah, the protocol speaks to 2 components of that. One is parents, the expectation that once we return to some form of in-person learning, or we would bring in these small groups of students, 10 or fewer, the first check is a parent in the morning and looking for those symptoms in their children. The second then is obviously a look by, if their students are riding the bus, by the bus driver. That is not necessarily an official check. The third check then is when students enter the school, and it's a visual check. And we do not do temperature as a screen, but as you can imagine, trying to do that for hundreds of kids, we have in and outside in the doorway. And it's not necessarily a reliable test, right? You can still have COVID and not have a fever. But that's the current screening right now, once at home and once at school. And it's
Okay. Okay. And then, okay, that answer. Thank you, Superintendent.
Last but not least, Director Stradle, did you have any questions for this segment?
I'm just saying no, my questions were answered and Tori beat me to it, but that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Matt, we're good to go.
Excellent. So we're going to, and that jumped ahead there, we're going to move ahead to our Assistant Superintendent for Education, Shay James. So she's going to take us through a quick summary of our models and then go into a little more detail with those models, and then summarize some of the specialized instruction and activities.
So good evening, everyone. As you know, we've previously shared our educational delivery models for this academic school year, which have been informed by feedback and stakeholder input, as we have shared. And I do want to do just a quick review as we get into more details for the school year. So starting at the top left, again, is our comprehensive distance learning model. And as I've said, we've shared this information, but just as a reminder, two distinguishing factors: our students are taught by teachers and enrolled with students from their home school. In addition, we will utilize our North Clackamas School District curriculum in this model. And we did send out to our staff and community a return to school document on August 7th, which is also on our website now. If folks wanted to go and look at some of the details that were in there in terms of comprehensive distance learning. From this model, you see, when it's safe to do so, we will move into a hybrid model, which is below on the bottom left-hand side. And this will be a combination of in-person and online learning in this model. At this time, we will stay in comprehensive distance learning until the end of the first quarter. But prior to the first quarter ending, we will utilize all the tools and safety metrics that you've heard folks talking about to determine if it's safe to move into a hybrid model. The third model to the right is our North Clackamas School District online virtual model. And again, we also shared features of this model previously, but three key aspects of this program. Our students will be with teachers and other students from across our system. They will utilize the web-based curriculum, Edgenuity and Odysseyware, and families will commit to the program for the school year. Additionally, we are in the process of creating a return to school document for the virtual online program, which will be sent out next week to staff and community. Next slide. So we have been hard at work on our student and staff schedules, as you can see. And I just want to share across all grade levels, you will hear the following terms in relationship to the schedules. And I want to go through this terminology to make sure that folks understand what this means and what does this look like for your student. So you see the first term here, synchronous learning. And this is when students are meeting live and interacting with instruction, our teachers and students all together virtually in a classroom setting. So it's kind of like being in the classroom, but virtually, and they're going together. Asynchronous learning is when teachers provide continued instruction after the live interactive learning. And sometimes that could be before or after, but it just depending on how it lands in the week. But examples of asynchronous learning would be use of videos, readings of articles, reading of books, things to enhance the learning, practice opportunities, peer interactions, projects, etc. And then you see applied learning. And applied learning is an extension of asynchronous learning. And I think it's hard for some folks to distinguish between the asynchronous and the applied learning, but it's where students continue to hone skills independently through teacher assigned work. So examples of applied learning could be lab write-ups, it could be essays, it could be projects, research, etc. And as we've shared and talked about, we're working to balance screen time and consistency for families and staff at each level, and that they have a combination of synchronous, asynchronous, and applied learning time structured within the schedule. Each schedule, K-12, has community and office time built in. And when we say community, that's the check-in times that will happen 5 days a week with students and teachers. And they will be having different types of conversations and different social emotional learning activities within that time. In addition, social emotional learning and supports for students are intentionally built into all schedules K-12. And additionally, our flex days will be used to support individual students and families with things such as, but not limited to, IEP meetings, technology support for students and families, additional language learning supports, academic help, and just the various things that are needed for students and with our teachers at that time. I want to reiterate that students in comprehensive distance learning in a special program, this is K-12 within a school such as immersion, can expect to have full access to the same curriculum and learning opportunities that we do in a traditional school year, although the delivery of the instruction might look a little bit different. Next slide. Here you see visuals of our secondary schedule, so for middle school and high school. And in addition to what I just shared, I want to confirm that all students will have access to electives, support courses, and core classes needed towards graduation. So you can see we've tried to align elementary, middle, and high school with colors, synchronous, asynchronous, and applied learning to make it as easy as we can for families. And I will point out in our first iteration that went out of return to schools, we had some colors that were a little off in the schedule. So if you caught that, please go to the website and feel free to look in and be able to look and see the changes in the color. But nothing in the schedule changed within that. It was just some colors were off from the programs we were using. So to support students K-12 in their schedules, courses, and navigating school during this difficult time, our counselors will be working very hard. They will be working hard to provide students with opportunities to practice social skills. They will be providing small group supports for grief and loss issues, stress reduction, and coping skills. They will be providing individual supports, short-term counseling, and resources for depression, anxiety, and self-harm. They will be working with students for transitions and to help them get acclimated to schools, particularly in grades 6 through 9. We already know that that can be a difficult transition to make, and particularly when we're doing it virtual. So they will be checking in with students in a different way to try to help make that as smooth as possible. They will be providing regular updates to students and families on where needs can be met, such as food, therapy, housing support, financial support, mental health, etc. And they will also coordinate with community partners and agencies, and they will be accessible to parents via phone, email, and video conferencing. In addition to other support staff in the building, our instructional assistants will continue to play a key role in supporting students and staff. Each school is assigned a bilingual IA to support students and assist with interpretation and translation to parents and community members in the school's main partner language. Instructional IAs will provide additional small group supports to students, amongst other things. Bilingual IAs will continue to provide parents with training and support on navigating and accessing technology. And really, they do this because in navigating language differences and having the trust with families, this really worked for us in the spring when we were able to implement our bilingual IAs and supporting families with technology. And this will be in addition to video tutorials and a technology help desk that's coming up that will be available for parents and students for more persistent technology needs that they may have. Instructional assistants will continue to be accessible to parents for support in accessing school and district resources, and they will also prioritize supports for our English language learners, students with disabilities, our teen parents, etc., and students that need a little bit more or maybe just need a trusted adult around while they're navigating. And our instructional assistants have many ways of supporting students and families, and they will continue to be critical and the trusted adults for many of our students and staff as we move forward. So we're also working on our service delivery models for special education and English language learning. And the Oregon Department of Education guidance came out on August 11th, just a tad bit earlier than they said. However, I will say there is a lot of information in the guidance that has come out. There's more than one. We're currently looking at these guidance and using them to review to create our delivery models. But what I can share with you at this time is our English language learning team is prepared to support students with a scope that is similar to models we use in a traditional year. So this includes small group specialized instruction and prioritized services for newcomers. Our students at the elementary level will have services provided in their classroom through content courses. So this means it's a full inclusion approach where students don't leave their classroom for services. And students in our middle and high school will have services provided in an ELD period that addresses their language acquisition needs. However, I want to point out that we have worked hard with our schedules to support students in maintaining access to core classes and electives if they're receiving English language acquisition services. And all ELD classes at the high school level will earn credit towards the North Clackamas School District diploma. Our special education team is working on the details of their service delivery models, so there will be more information that will be coming out soon, but instruction will be flexible and responsive for families, interactive with limited pullout, and we will be using assistive technology and professional development for all of our teachers and universal design lesson planning, which really ultimately supports all students in learning. We did a small training this week with our administrators on a new technology component. It was a Google Read and Write, and the excitement of being able to utilize this coveted technology to support all of our students is something that we're really looking forward to. Our North Clackamas School District virtual online program has ran a randomized lottery process this week, as we did have more applicants than spots in our program. Currently, we are in the process of calling all families to let them know if their number was drawn and to confirm a continued desire to have a spot in this program. If a family declines a spot, we will move to the next student on the waiting list. We will send confirmation letters out to families who are in the program, as well as a letter to those who were not able to get into the program. In addition, as I mentioned earlier, we are creating the virtual online program Return to Schools guidance document to go out next week, which will include additional details such as schedules, how we're going to be supporting English language learners and our students with disabilities, and many other types of the information that mirrored what was in our comprehensive learning guidance document. We know many staff and family are anxious about the potential move from comprehensive distance learning into a hybrid learning model. We heard about some of this during public comment as well tonight. We want to reiterate that we will not be moving into a hybrid model until it is deemed safe to do so. And we will be using the required considerations of public health metrics in addition to many other safety considerations that we will be looking at. Our families have asked the district to continue comprehensive distance learning model for those who desire if the district returns to in-person learning. And at this moment, we are working hard to establish the best comprehensive distance learning model and virtual online program that we can deliver. Given the changing nature of this virus and its transmission rates, we have learned that planning for what education will look like beyond the next 2 to 3 months is not the best use of our resources, so that we can focus on providing the immediate best with what we're doing. So when the return to in-person learning becomes more of a possibility, we will reevaluate the number of students that we can serve in our virtual online program, as well as the possibility of maintaining some form of comprehensive distance learning. So we are going to be looking at that for our families to know for both options. Again, we will be cautious before returning students to in-person learning, and students, staff, and family safety is our top priority, and we will continue to hold that standard. When we're talking about safety, we know that currently the Oregon Schools Activity Association, some call it OSAA, has postponed athletic competition until the start of this winter. We know that this is a disappointment to many as well, and we know that many of our students stay engaged in academics because of athletics and activities. So to meet the needs of as many students as possible, we are currently working on creating plans and opportunities for students to engage in virtual athletic conditioning and preparation prior to the season opening. We're working to create and expand opportunities optional for student groups to engage in virtual activities and club connections. And we're exploring optional virtual connections for coach, student, and peer-to-peer interactions as well. And here you see a slide from OSAA that has been made public recently. And this slide indicates when each sport may start to practice if and when determined to move forward safely with athletics in our winter season. And so our athletic directors are preparing for this now. They're working with coaches on a plan to keep our students actively engaged until the time arrives when we can all go and root for our teams that we often go and root for. And so, and I do want to point out that that also means for our middle school students who will not have access to the athletic programs that they often are able to participate. And so we're looking at how we can keep them virtually engaged as well. So I will stop and take questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shay. We appreciate all that great information. Director Strado, you have any questions?
I guess as it relates to, I saw on one of the slides, it showed bilingual staff to assist EL students. There's a lot of languages, so that's a strong statement. Do we have bilingual to cover the languages we speak?
Yeah, so what our team does is we have a bilingual IA that supports in each school with the main partner language. So whatever the most significant second language of that school is. So we don't have bilingual IAs that cover every language at every school, but they do work as a team and support each other when need be as well around other languages and needs in terms of communication.
And then a follow on to that, would we have a cohort of, since we are going to be, remote, having, I imagine we're covering Russian, but if we had a Hungarian language, we had students in different campuses, would they be teamed together so that they have supports?
Do you mean the students or the IAs?
Yeah, the students. I mean, if, the students with similar language can help each other as well. Even though they may not be in the same virtual school.
Yeah, and I think that looks different depending on the number of students that you have in your course with you that maybe speak the same language or other languages. It depends on if you're in a newcomer's course or if you're at a different level in terms of English or your language. So there's a lot of factors in that, but we definitely try to support partners in affinity, partnering up, doing work where they feel more comfortable and can speak to each other as needs be. So just lots of different variations within that.
Thank you.
Director Bauer, any questions?
Oh, thank you. And thank you all so far for the depth of more information and details. And I know, as you said, this is evolving and you're still, catching up with the latest guidelines, but thank you for all of that. I wanted to just talk about two things. Communication with parents. The mailing that you did last week, and you may have heard that some parents said it wasn't simplified enough. They had some additional questions, and you've addressed some meanings again and definitions, but it's kind of the bottom line too. When do they have to be home? They kind of want to know the big picture. And so if you can just speak a little bit about future communication with parents and when they can ask specific questions about the plans, because I know you have some plans with each school, maybe principal and.
Yeah, I'm going to ask for a little bit of support from Cindy Detchen, our other Assistant Superintendent of Operations who's over communications.
Yeah, I can certainly address some of the communication tools. The comprehensive distance learning packet that was sent out last week was in response to the need to see what a sample schedule could look like. And that's what you're seeing on the screen right now. And this is the case for each level. But within that, it's really going to be the teacher that communicates with their particular classroom. To reiterate what Dr. James has said in previous communications, is that we understand that parents cannot be home for every single child at these exact times. And while math will be happening in a synchronous manner, in meaning live with the classroom in that middle school schedule from 9 to 10 o'clock on a Monday morning, if you're in that group, if a student can't do that and a parent can't do that right at that time, it is going to be recorded and they can access it at a different time. We are also trying to provide a consistent schedule for families who need that as well. So these are sample schedules, but the more intricacies for a particular child, a particular family is really going to come from their teacher. Having said that, we also know that parents would love more simplified language. Educators are not great at that. We have a lot of terms and we get a lot of information out and then we have to go back and explain it. And so we are refining our communication skills as well. And it's duly noted that we need to do that a little bit more.
Well, it is a whole new model that you are developing. What is that community and connection?
Yeah, thank you.
It's a big block.
Yes, so community, every day we are going to be checking in with our students in some kind of form. And so that when you see the community and connections, that's on the flex day, but we want to make sure folks know that that's the time where there will be a live interaction with video in which our teachers will be doing check-ins with students, peer-to-peer, some of the social emotional learning that will be happening during that time. And just get to know you, right? And keeping us engaged and connected with each other. So community time really is kind of what we're looking at there.
Mm-hmm. And then my last question, Shay, is about the lottery. How will that work? And yeah, just what do you know about that process now?
Yeah, so this week there were random numbers that were assigned to each of the students that applied to the program. There was a randomized draw that happened in terms of accepting students up to 550. We do know that if one student gets in, also their sibling, if in the same household, will get into the program. And so we are in the process this week of making phone calls to all of our families, and some of that will probably go into early next week, just to confirm that you do still want the spot, so that if they are no longer interested in that we can move a student up off of the waiting list into that spot. And then we will be sending out confirmation letters and letters to families to let them know you either are in the virtual online program or you were not able to get in, and what happens next.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Director Way, do you have any questions?
I do. I have, I think, two questions. I'd like to thank Director Schodel for asking this question around English language learners, because we know that ELLs, at least in our state, definitely fall behind, right, in terms of graduation rates, learning assessments, educational assessments. And so this is a particular population, I think, in addition to SPED, that I think we really need to be paying a closer attention to. So I'm just curious as to, and I know that we are still trying to, have the right enrollment numbers and all of that for all of our schools. So that may be a little premature, but do we know how many newcomers would be in our district for this upcoming school year? And do we know which languages or new communities that might be getting into our district?
We do have that information. I don't have it with me at this moment, but we could get that to you. Our team that is working with our ELD teachers and program are proactively looking at all of that right now, and our new students who are coming into the system. So we can get that to you.
Thank you so much. And I really, I think that having that data would be really important because, I think even when we talk about ELDs, we just tend to lump ELDs all into one. And we know, right, that different languages, different communities, particularly smaller communities, may just have a harder time, of adjusting with the traditional educational system, but I could just imagine going virtual would be that much harder. So I think whatever types of detailed data that we have around some of the communities and languages would be helpful. And then that way, I think we can target our efforts a little bit more specifically to some of those kids. And then just my last question is around attendance. I am not sure if we are, I guess, how does that work? If it's like 9:10, a kid hasn't shown up on screen yet. How would that work? And can we grant families, particularly during this, high time of anxiety, stress, can we grant them some leniency and flexibility? Because we know that, not all kiddos, not all families are going to be, in their seats, right, all the time, ready to show up. So just curious about that.
Yes, so attendance will be taken in with multiple measures, not just that you showed up to the live synchronous learning time. It will be taken even if you're working on asynchronous during that time, if you look at a recording later and turn in your work. And so right now what we're doing is looking at what are all the different ways that we can show that you engaged in school for that day, and how does that count for attendance? And so we've got a couple people that are working on that, and we'll be making the details of that information clear to parents and students as we move forward, so that folks know that they won't be penalized if you can't make a live time and that you can look at it later, but keep up on your work, and here's what that looks like. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. What I would like to share with you, I think that's maybe helpful, is our ELL graduation rate is 3% lower than our North Clackamas School District and much higher than the state. And so I think that shows, while we have a long way to go, it shows the importance and the scaffolding that our team is doing. And so they want to continue to close that gap of 3% and continue to raise the graduation rates, and we'll be looking particularly to continue serving our ELD students in the same manner or better.
Director Perez?
Yeah, I just have one question under counseling supports. It says counselors will be accessible to parents via phone, email, and video conferencing. Which is awesome. Will we have counselors accessible to parents via phone, email, and video conferencing in all languages? That's one question. And then the second question is, on that same same page there under counseling supports, the first bullet, frequent communication and check-ins with parents and students. How frequent is frequent communication, and what, can you clarify communication versus a check-in?
I can get you information on that. They are currently working on the model with counselors and what professional development looks like, what's the tight and what's the loose in terms of the counseling expectations with our parents and students. So we'll get you additional information on what the communication and check-ins look like.
Okay.
And yes, we won't necessarily have counselors that are able to speak to parents in their native language, but we will definitely make sure that interpretation and translation is available as needed where we can, when we're not able to find the language match with folks there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Director Benaloga.
Thank you. Yes, I have one question and one comment. So my question is around the IAs for our English language learners. How early, I guess what my question is, when are they going to be available? Because I think part of the concern is having those English language learners, the families and the students being prepared when school starts. So how early will IAs be able to start supporting and communicating with those families?
I don't have an exact date for you at this time, but we can get that for you. What I will share is the first week of school will be an orientation week of such, where we will be acclimating students to what's happening in terms of virtual learning. We will be making sure technology works, that we're doing get to know you and some of those community supports that you saw that we've been talking about. So there will definitely be some connection that week, and making sure students and families are connected and feel comfortable. Prior to that, I need to do some checking, and so I will do so and get that information to you soon if that will happen prior to the first week of school.
Okay, thank you. I just think that it's education can be confusing for a lot of parents, and I think that any support we can give to our English language learner families so that they understand what the process is and they feel a little bit more involved, even if it takes a little bit of extra time, I think that's really important. And I just had one comment about, and I want to say this is a daunting task, but I appreciate the fact that that the district is addressing the many requests for the comprehensive distance learning model to continue for the year. I think that our community will hear you and is going to be at least somewhat feel better that it's something that's on the table and that will be discussed at a later time. So I just want to put that out there, that I appreciate that, and I think our community will as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director McVeigh.
Thank you. Two questions. Is the 550 virtual online lottery K through 12 randomized, or was it a third high, third middle, and a third grade school?
We used proportionate numbers to our enrollment within the district in order to create comparable slots across the K-12 grades. So I hope I'm answering. If not, our superintendent.
Perfect. Second question is, I guess compare and contrast, like maybe the biggest difference between the CDL and the virtual online curriculum. Is there one or two things that is majorly different?
Yeah, I think, the North Clackamas School District curriculum, using our standards, our textbooks, our instructional strategies in the comprehensive distance learning versus the virtual online program, is a web-based curriculum that is aligned to universal standards, and is curriculum that was completed through their web-based program. And so Edgenuity and OdysseyWare are the ones that we will be using for the virtual online program. And then I think just the connection to in comprehensive distance learning, your teachers that you're familiar with and your peers within the school versus the virtual online. It will be teachers from across our system and peers from across our system. So I think those are probably the two biggest things for people to know, and what it is and what it isn't and how it looks different.
Thank you for that.
Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you. I just have a few questions. So first and foremost, thank you guys. You guys have done an awesome job with your terms being very equity focused. And so I appreciate that. With all of the new terms and the definitions, do we have plans for a definitions page or a terms page that gives parents something to go to?
Yes, so we did put the synchronous, asynchronous, applied learning, community, office hours, and there might wellness center for elementary in the document that went out on August 7th. That is on online, but I could get with our other assistant superintendent of operations and see if we could do just a definition page for folks to make it easy for a go-to and a place for families to look at if they need additional information.
Yeah, we alluded to it earlier, but I mean, everyone is getting a very quick and dirty education right now. And so anything that gives parents cliff notes would be helpful, I think, for them to kind of navigate the different tools that they need. My next question is specifically about sixth grade transition. And I'm going to narrow this into some specificity because I think we have a gap that we might fall into. We've got a group of kids going into sixth grade at Rock Creek that will be splitting off for seventh grade. And so for all of our differently able students that have that 1 year at one school and then splitting off to a different one, do we have any plans to make sure that their transition in this very uncertain time is not cumbersome?
Yeah, so this is actually a conversation that we have been having this week. We have the same situation at a couple of our elementary schools as well. And so I don't have answers for you tonight, but what I can tell you is it is part of the conversation that we're having in terms of what can we do to help students feel connected and supported the best that we can through all of that. So we'll get back to you on that.
Okay, excellent. And then two more things, communication. I know that we have specificity coming from the principals and the teachers, but is there any way we can do like a weekly, like this week, the focus is this, you know, like kind of big and bold on the website so parents are very clear, like this is your focus this week, just so they don't miss anything.
I am sure that we can look at that. I will rely on my colleague, Cindy Dutchin, to help me with that, but we could take a look at what.
And I'm thinking high level. I'm not talking about the specifics, but just really high level to make sure that we don't have anyone miss anything that's going out. So that would be appreciated. And then the last question I have is, we talked about attendance and I appreciate the answer that I heard, but I just want to ask, how is ADM being measured right now, or is it not?
So ADM will, let me back up. I'm going to speak with attendance, and I will need to get a little bit more information specifically in terms of ADM and what that means. But we do have to have the daily check-ins with students. And like I said, that can be in multiple measures in order to mark them present for attendance, which will lead to the ADM. But I'm not 100% sure how that piece is working. We do have one of our people working on that with ODE, and so I'll have to get back to you on any nuances with that.
Cool. And I just want to say, whoever has to measure that, God bless you, because this is going to be crazy.
Yes.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you for that, Matt. You ready?
Yep, we got a couple more slides. Thank you, Shay, for all of that. You provided a lot of information there and tackled a lot of questions. Assistant Superintendent Detchen has a couple of slides here she just wants to update us on, and then I'll bring us home.
Yeah, communicable disease prevention, just want to let you know we're continuing to work on the information that we need to include in our blueprint and provide to all of our staff and eventually to our parents and students who will be coming into our schools at some point. But certainly before our staff gets there, we want to make sure we have all of these components in place, the training done. We'll have some online training modules for all staff. There is a document they have to read and a test that they have read it and they understand those social distancing guidelines, and just a training too around cohort tracing for themselves and checking in and signing in and keeping track of who they may have come in contact with. Those are all really important things for us to do our part in the larger scheme of things, both in our community and in our state. So just some of the technical details are continuing to be worked out. We are working on additional technology support. I know this is definite interest to our community and to our board, who has been very strong advocates for legislative funding and support. We will be deploying over 8,000 additional Chromebooks to students. This is above and beyond what we delivered last spring. While we collected some back from students who were leaving us for graduation or moving to other parts of the state, we still have all of these to get ready to deploy. Some of those are brand new. We've ordered more for some replacements a little bit later on in the school year. They will be disinfected. They will be wrapped in plastic bags. They will be barcoded, and we will be using our bus drivers to deliver those out to our families. A request form will be going out next week to all of our families to indicate their need for a Chromebook and or a hotspot. We do have some hotspots available as well that we can provide for families. And this is a very exciting component that we're going to be able to stand up this year, which is going to be a help desk. Our goal is to have it also staffed, at least in the early evenings, for families who aren't home during that 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 time frame when the classes may be happening, so that they can get assistance with all of those different apps and logging in, and my Chromebook won't restart, and how do I do this? In addition, we are trying to make sure that we have some assistance for bilingual help desk folks. These will be some of our technicians. These will be some folks that are in our system already that will be reassigned to some of these areas. It's also very exciting is the fact, and I think this might address some of the earlier questions as well. We do have access. In addition to our translators and interpreters that we have and employ in our school district, we also contract with 3 different outside agencies. So when we may have staff that can speak Ukrainian or Russian or Spanish or Vietnamese and a few other languages, we certainly don't touch anywhere near the multitude of languages that our families make up and bring to our schools. But we do have access to those languages, and it's a telephone call away, and all of our staff have that phone number or access to know how to get to it. And if a family calls, we can figure out what language they need. We can put them on hold, get a third party on that line, and have that translation or interpretation available immediately. So we want to, and we'll make sure that our families know that as well. Just a reminder to all of our community that we update these pages on our website almost daily, at least a few times a week, to make sure that the latest information is up there. And we may not send out an email every single time. We don't want people to get overburdened with email and stop reading. So we try to send those out only when there's a big update, but we will continue to update, particularly the frequently asked questions tabs. Those are also available in Vietnamese, Russian, and Spanish. And some of these are under construction. So you might click on one and it might say more info to come soon, but that will come, I promise. And a lot of the information, like the OSAA information, has just been updated as well. Oh, see, I was precluding to the FAQs, but you can see that they're there in 3 different components. We have general FAQs about how do I get a Chromebook? Where is that form going to be? Those types of things. And then specific, we have a page around comprehensive distance learning, and then another specific to our virtual online program, so that we can separate those. So if a parent's looking for something more specific, they have an easier time finding it rather than wading through 100 different questions. And finally, because you asked last time, I thought this might be a great opportunity. I know we have a few dozen people watching via YouTube tonight. Please put this phone number in your cell phone and label it My Child's School, North Clackamas School District, Answer Now, My Kid's School is calling. You can label it anything you want to, but that is the phone number that will show up on your caller ID if someone from the school district is calling. And we want to make sure that you have that because that's going to be an important phone call to pick up and make sure that you don't miss that message.
Great, thank you, Cindy. Just some other pieces that we continue to work on. It is likely that we will need to enter into some memorandums of understanding with our labor associations. Issues around calendars, likely probably being one of those issues that we'll need to tackle in there. Changing in working conditions, et cetera. So that work hasn't yet started yet, but it probably will here within the next week to 10 days. We're also looking at our reallocation of staff. I put over their VOP, the virtual online program. We're really close to identifying the number of students that will be going to the VOP from each of our schools, and that will help inform then which staff will be allocated or reallocated to the virtual online program. That is a huge undertaking especially as we get really close to the start of the school year. We'll have some staff that will be shifting. You heard from our Classified Labor Association president in the community comments at the beginning of our meeting. We have started the process of initiating some layoffs, primarily in those departments that fall outside of our general fund. The general fund is being supported through the state legislature for this coming year at the level that we thought it was going to. But outside of the general fund, we have a number of departments: transportation, nutrition services, our care program that are funded based either on outside grants and or outside revenue. And that revenue will not be coming, and the grants will not be providing us the resources we had originally intended, because we won't be providing those services. So we have started that process. We've also initiated a pay freeze in most departments in an effort to try to reassign as many laid off staff as we can into other departments. And we continue to have conversations about what benefits we could potentially maintain for laid off staff. Obviously, this is not a topic that any of us want to be having right now, particularly in the middle of a pandemic. And at the same time, our budget cannot sustain keeping folks on staff where we don't have the revenue coming in to support salaries and benefits. We also are working with our employees to allow some work from home, and as well as working on site. And so we've put policies, practices, protocols in place. And for folks that it seems appropriate to continue working from home, we're asking folks to sign an agreement. I think we've communicated with the board that we are going to allow teachers the choice of providing their instruction from home, or they will be allowed to come into their classroom or a space in the district to provide that instruction. And then obviously I think it's critical for our teachers that they begin receiving some professional development. As we've talked previously, teaching in an online format is quite different than teaching in a classroom with live students there. And so we are gearing up professional development for our staff beginning the week of August 31st, and that will continue throughout the fall for sure. So next steps, our re-entry blueprints will be sent to ODE no later than Monday. You have copies of the draft elementary, middle, and high school blueprints in your board packet. We continue to make some revisions in those, and since we put them in the board packet, they've been revised slightly, but nothing significant. Those our blueprints will include our decision to begin the school year in comprehensive distance learning. And that's what we're asking in our blueprints. Once we submit those and get those approved, we will then begin to also work on completing blueprints that would allow us to bring in those small groups of students, those groups of 10 or fewer. Once those are prepared, we would bring those back for the board to review. We are, as Cindy referenced, continuing to update our parents and our staff throughout August and September. Some of that communication will now start to come from the individual schools versus the district. And I think it's really important that our parents and our students begin hearing from their schools, and eventually when our teachers return from their teachers. And so there'll probably be a little bit of a shift from district communication now to school specific communication. We shared that delivery design is underway, both for technology devices as well as meals to students. We're trying to figure out how we can push more food out into the community instead of having families come to a couple school sites to pick up that food. We think if we can get it closer to where students live, we can increase the number of meals that we're providing for students. We'll prepare for another update for the board on August 27th. And again, remind folks that the first days of school are September 8th and 9th, but as Shay referenced, those first 4 days, the 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th, will be transition days, kind of a slow entry to the school year, where there'll be training for parents and staff and students. There'll be opportunities for some orientation, making sure technology is up and running with, I would say, the first kind of true day of instruction likely would be the 14th, I believe. And so I'll conclude our presentation just by reminding what the recommendation is, superintendent's recommendation is tonight, these 5 components. And with that, I will pause, see if there's any last minute questions, and turn it over to our chair.
I'm not going to do a roll call. Just raise your hand, please, if you have a question. Director Bauer, I see you. Director Perez, I see you. Hold on. Okay, cool. Director Schrader, you go ahead and start.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Superintendent. When I want to do a clarifying question, because you summarize things, but having teachers on campus or at home, are you envisioning that all buildings through the district would be open and utilized, or would it be consolidated to as many buildings as needed?
That's a great question. We're going to open our buildings next week to our staff following the health recommendations, physical distancing, mask requirements, etc. We will open our buildings to parents, community on the 24th. Again, there are mask requirements. Parents will not be allowed, or students, etc., will not have access to the building, but they will have access to the office to get paperwork, ask questions, etc. And we anticipate keeping our schools open as well as our district offices open during this comprehensive distance learning time period, though we are restricting people's movements throughout the building, community parents, just to protect staff that are in the building and quite honestly follow the health recommendations.
And the reason I'm asking that kind of question is, I won't say we know, but I've heard in the past the cost of hibernating a building, it costs about $100,000 a year to hibernate a building. And that's because we're heating it like at 50 degrees and we're not having services in there. But if we have a building and staff is using all parts of the building versus closing down sections that are not being used, the cost of heating it to comfortable levels is a lot more money. So we're going to be cleaning, heating. There's just an exceptional amount of money that's going to be spent for heating a large building versus heating only using buildings that we need. And telling staff, well, you're not going to be in your classroom, you're going to be in a classroom, but not your classroom because we have a severe budget cut that we're going to have to cut staff. So
Yeah,
that's my interest.
Yeah, it's a good perspective, and we're certainly aware that what we've heard from our teachers is that they many of them very much would like to be able to teach in their classroom where their materials are, where they have a whiteboard, where they have the various pieces of furniture and curriculum materials that they want. And in order to do that, we need really one classroom, per teacher from a safety standpoint. That being said, I don't think we're going to need to be heating our gyms or our cafeterias and some of those other spaces, and so we'll be able to control that. And we do have in a number of our schools individual HVAC controls per room, and so that is also helpful as well. We also anticipate that the cleaning is going to be minimal. And because we're going to limit access to a classroom just to that teacher, and we've talked about, the cleaning is maybe the teacher puts the garbage can in the hallway. When they leave at the end of the day, it gets emptied by a custodian, but even custodians aren't going into our teachers' rooms. So we're still working out those protocols, but it's balancing, I think, what's going to be good instruction and where our teachers are going to be the most effective, certainly with some budgetary factors in there.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Director Bauer.
Thank you, Superintendent, for all the information, and especially on some of the budget cuts. Also, I appreciate the messaging that you've been giving us about the difference between these outside grants and resources for transportation, because it made me aware of, again, that, and I appreciate the classified letters that we're getting, because, your information in theirs helps us understand their story, and remembering how vital they are, how essential they are, and why they're working so hard for kids. I really appreciate, the work they do. They're part of our team. They're part of our community. But people in Salem and people for the federal government need to hear those stories. We need to push them. That one special session was one day. They didn't deal with liability. We have budget needs, and they need to be reminded of that. And it does concern me that anyone is without health care in the middle of a pandemic. So thank you for all of that information. And the budget story will continue, I know, and you'll
Absolutely.
be updating us. One other piece, though, I wanted to, could you share that also the guidelines and childcare is an ongoing piece of this too? That you're, whatever you can say about that, I would appreciate.
Sure. We historically have offered before and after school care during a normal school year. We have staff that we employ to do that. Again, their salaries are paid for by the parents who pay a fee for that before and after school care. What we know right now is that we are not sure of our intent to provide that after school or daycare right now. Our intent is not to do that for a couple of reasons. One is that, as you referenced, Director Bauer, we have no liability insurance coverage right now. And no school district does. And I'm a little apprehensive. We talk about risk to the school district. You pay me to keep our risk low. And so I'm not comfortable bringing students onto our campuses right now when we don't have a liability coverage. The second piece to that is that our state and our governor and our Oregon Department of Education have said that it's not safe to bring students onto campus. And so why would we then bring our children onto campus for daycare when we've said it's not safe to do that? So it's a struggle because we know that daycare is a need in our community right now. We're certainly hearing from a lot of folks that it's a key to the economy coming back. So I will just say it's a piece that we continue to wrestle with. Our position today is that we will not be starting the school year with our care program, but it is something that we're going to continue to revisit and just keep an eye on. The state is coming out with additional guidance supposedly tomorrow around care programs, but it is a hard one just because of the need and the other factors that put it at a high risk activity.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then I also saw Director Perez.
Yeah, my question was for the superintendent regarding liability coverage, which he just covered. But I thought I raised my hand before Director Barr, but that's okay. It's all right. One quick question, Superintendent, is there any update as to when the state might revisit the liability coverage or chat again about it or yeah?
Yeah, nothing official. There is a legislative committee that is studying that. As we know, it was not addressed in Monday's legislative session. There are speculation, and I'll use that word specifically, that there could be a third special session in September. We do know that there'll be another revenue forecast that will come out on September 23rd. There could be a chance that revenue forecast isn't as, that's worse, and it may require the legislature to revisit some budget issues. But there's also potentially some speculation that they'll address the liability issue in that third special session, should it be called. There are no current plans to call that.
Thank you, Superintendent.
Yes.
Thank you, guys. Just a few notes on what you guys were saying. OSBA is also trying to tackle that subject. So as board members, make sure that you stay connected to that source. And then just to recap on everything before we get to this vote, Matt, I went through our list from last time of all things that the board had asked for. So there was 2 things that I didn't see in one, and if I missed this, I'm sorry. We had asked for the ventilation report to be sent to all. Did we get that?
Oh, I think we misunderstood that. I think we would send it to anybody who wanted it. So we can
send it to me so I can get it out to everyone.
I do have an update on that. We just got some newer guidelines that I was not comfortable releasing some of that information yet. So if you would give me the grace of a week to make sure that what we have is up to date with the current guidance, I would appreciate that.
That's perfect. Thank you. And the other thing is the immersion programs. I know that Director Benaloga, that was your concern. Did you feel like you got your answers today?
Yes, and I think we covered that partially as well, that I believe the district is directing people to the comprehensive distance learning to continue their immersion program. So thank you for that follow-up.
Okay, perfect. Cool. That was all I had for follow-up. So I think we're ready to take action on this. So all the board members, you all can see these recommendations, right?
Mr. Ford, I just have a quick question.
Sorry, Director Way, what do you got?
Just as we were talking about the care program, this question popped up in my head. So even if the state decides, the liability insurance and that gets worked out with bringing daycare back into schools, we would still have to follow a ratio, correct, of 1 to at least 10 kids?
Yeah, the guidance, yes. We will have to follow a ratio. I believe that ratio will change. New guidance is coming out on Friday. And okay. I was told last week what I thought the ratio was going to be, and I don't want to say publicly in case it changes between now and then, which is highly possible. So yes, we would then need to follow the guidance for daycares that the state would put out.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes.
And Chair Ford, I had a follow-up question based on questions or answers that came out from other people.
Okay.
May I ask a follow-up?
Yeah,
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Superintendent, as it relates to insurance, no insurance, how does that come into play with staff?
Yeah, workman's comp.
Okay, so our employees are covered through workman's comp, so that okay.
Yeah, we believe so, is that they would be covered there. They'd also, be covered through their insurance plan as well.
Okay. Any other questions before we move on to this action?
I would say that the language in the agenda item is, if somebody were to read it from the agenda item, would be better than reading it off this screen.
What? You don't want us to read your dissertation. You want us to read the haiku instead. Okay, I will open the floor for a motion.
Motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation for North Clackamas schools open under the comprehensive distance learning educational delivery model through at least November 10th, 2020, and authorize the superintendent to transition to the hybrid learning educational delivery model after consultation with the school board, with state officials, and with consideration of the public health related metrics distributed by local health officials, to establish a temporary 1 school year virtual online program learning option for 550 students in grades K through 12 to be named North Clackamas Virtual Online Program. 2, temporarily adjust the adopted district calendars and seek retroactive board approval within 30 calendar days of any adjustment. And to establish temporary physical distancing and other public health related requirements on school district property.
Thank you, Director Perez. I hear a motion for the 5 points in the recommendation. Do we have a second?
Director Bauer, second.
Excellent. We have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion?
I have a question on what the purpose of bullet point 4 is when there's already guidelines established by the governor.
I gotta pull it up here. It's it's just it probably is overdue. We're just saying that you give me the asking for the authority to institute those. I don't know, Tori, if there would be any situation in which we would do something different than the public health requirements. I'm trying to think if there's an exception, or if my staff can chime in, but.
So we wouldn't necessarily have anything greater than what the governor's already put in practice.
I'm not thinking anything. Did I hear Tiffany's voice? Is this the bullet that's referencing the ability to add physical distancing in district facilities and so on? There may be circumstances where we need to close a portion of a facility. We're noticing congregation of a lot of people, and the superintendent might want to put up some temporary barricades or remove something temporarily because we're noticing public transmission of virus. That was the thinking behind the bullet, as well as if we wanted to or needed to institute mask wearing for all staff, for instance, even if that was not in the governor's requirements.
Thank you. And as I had some time to think, I think, Tori, here's another example, is that when community comes to the district office, we're not going to allow access to the building. We're going to reserve, for example, conference room C right there at the end, and just ask folks to please wait there and staff will come there. So it's putting some of those pieces in place.
And also, just for clarity for everyone else, it's actually bullet 5 that Tori is asking about, just so you're all clear which one.
I have a little bit of an add-on to that, to Director McVeigh's point. So I live close by Mount Scott Elementary, and there's great field there, track field. I've seen a lot of different families just utilize that field when school is not in place. What I've observed, if they've all been social distancing, are we seeing right now that we're potentially going to close those fields and say, hey, you can't, exercise here anymore, you can't gather? I'm just a little worried that, that might cause some feelings, bad feelings in our community if we're saying, no, you can't use this for exercise, or, mainly exercise is what I've been seeing.
Yes, we have said, and we continue to allow access to our fields and our walking paths as long as folks are maintaining social distancing protocols. I think I'll give you an example. Happy Valley Middle School has a fenced-in basketball court, and we posted signs that the court was closed. Kids continued to, dozens, 30 kids, 40 kids at a time, were on a very small space. We've locked facilities. We ended up taking off the basketball hoops in an effort to keep kids from, using those facilities, not because we don't want them to have physical activity, it's that they weren't minding the physical distancing requirements. So those are some specific cases. That's one specific case that I can give you in which we took some other action, right, to protect people, protect our kids.
Other discussion? We do have a motion on the table. Okay, and just connectivity back to our liability, we have to remember that all of our facilities, without liability insurance, we have to be very aware of how we manage those spaces. Okay, are we ready for a vote? I'll do a roll call. Director Way, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Bauer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director McVeigh, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Benaloga, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Perez?
Aye.
Director Schrader?
Aye.
And I'm also aye. All right, thank you for all of that great information. And we all need to take a deep breath and exhale for a second. That was a lot. You guys are working. Okay, next on the agenda is our capital projects bond refinancing, and Galen is our presenter. Galen, are you ready?
I am.
How
Very
are
nice
you?
very nice to see everybody tonight. I'm doing well. So you have in front of you an action item to refinance our 2014 general obligation bonds. As a reminder, these bonds, or at least a portion of them, have been refinanced before. And the interest rate right now is quite low and would allow us to save a considerable amount of money for our taxpayers. Are there any questions?
Anyone?
I have a question.
Director Perez?
That's anytime we could save money for our taxpayers. That's awesome. I'm wondering, Galen, because we've refinanced several times with this bond, how much have we saved for our community and taxpayers over the years?
So including the estimated savings for this refinance, it would be about $34.6 million.
34.6 million. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. I'm speechless. Awesome. Thank you.
Oh, it is awesome. Other questions? It's kind of hard to ask a question after that number, right? All right.
I will just say, let the board know, once we have completed the bond sales on September 17th, we will communicate to our community the good news. Once again, we're saving them some additional property taxes.
Excellent.
Just want interest rates to stay steady.
Yeah, need that. All right, this is an action item, so I will entertain a motion.
McVeigh, I recommend we adopt superintendent's recommendation on refinancing 2014 general obligation bonds.
Excellent.
Second, Director Perez.
Motion given by Director McVeigh, seconded by Director Perez with speed and intent.
I saw Director Barr making a move there, so I knew I had to move quickly.
Forward, yeah.
Thank you, Chair Ford.
Any discussion? All right, seeing none, let's go for a vote. Director Strado, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Perez?
Aye.
Director Way?
Aye.
Director Benaloga?
Aye.
Director Bauer?
Aye.
Director McVeigh?
Aye.
And I'm also aye. It's unanimous. Thank you guys for that. Thank you, Galen.
Thank you.
Next on the list, we have board liaison committee assignments. This is an action item. We do this every single year and it's been led by our vice chair. So I will hand it over to her initially and then I'll take it back to entertain a motion. So Director Bauer.
Thank you all for responding and so quickly and readily volunteering to serve on these many committees. And we got them all covered. I think all of them have at least 2 or 3. We can't have more than 3, then that's a legal meeting. I think there was one we had on there at first, COVID-19 budget reductions. That will include all of the board in the future, and probably and most likely the budget committee. Health curriculum, I was told they may not be meeting as much this year, but other than that, I think we have it covered, and even with some alternates. So thank you.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion.
Director Benaloga, I move that we approve the board liaison committee assignments for 2020-2021.
Excellent. It's been appropriately moved by Director Benaloga. Do I have a second?
McVeigh, second.
Excellent. I got a second from Director McVeigh. Any additional discussion? You guys are making it easy. All right, let's do a vote. Director McVeigh.
Aye.
Director Bauer.
Aye.
Director Benaloga.
Aye.
Director Way.
Aye.
Director Perez.
Aye.
And Director Strado.
Aye.
And aye from me also. Motion carries. Thank you very much. And last agenda item number 6, protocols and operating agreements. Once again, our vice chair has been leading this with our team with me, but she's been leading it. So I'll turn it over to her and then I'll open the floor. Director Bauer.
Thank you, Chair Ford. This was brought up on the July 2nd, 2020 board meeting, and there was input on first a request to cover the balance between law and courtesy. 11E already includes to treat all present with respect, and operating agreements the board governs through policy and strategic direction, so I didn't really act on that. Another was group request and follow-up protocol. Number 13 was added to board process and protocols. The board chair may summarize action items and wrap up following official meetings. The intent is to remind us of the work we need to do and continue communication with the superintendent. The other addition was number 4. Board member requests outside of open session will be acted upon as ascertained by the superintendent and board chairs and response shared with members. And that was added to help the superintendent set priorities of our requests and help keep all board members informed of the requests that we're asking of him. He's always been so great in responding to all of our requests. So it's making sure that we take the time to evaluate what the request is and making sure it is board work and the purpose of the request, and is the time right? Maybe we need to just add it to a list. Right now is a very busy time. So those are my thoughts, or process, I should say.
And just to add to that, another big part of this document and the discussion we had last time is based on, we have to keep in mind that we are in charge of governing all of our documents, all of our policies, and all of our practices. And with that, we currently have a very skilled, highly skilled superintendent with a relationship that has been built over many years. We are moving into a realm where we will have a new superintendent with a new relationship being built. And anyone that's been in any relationship, without clarity, there can be a lot of confusion. And so we're trying to give some real clarity of where the lines of responsibilities are so that we don't overwhelm our new superintendent before they even get here. So just keep that in mind. So any questions before we move into motion?
Any questions or
Questions for
statements or questions?
Yeah, Director Trado?
So is it questions and comments, or is it just questions?
Yeah, questions or comments? Yep.
Thank you. Just want to make sure. Nice. I have a concern about number 4. My concern is we're each equally elected equally, and this operating agreement number 4 serves our authority. That's one statement. 2, we typically put in place things that are fixing things, not put things in place that could be a thing. And to have the chair and vice chair be the funnel of our requests, I believe it creates a situation of chaos, because if the chair and vice chair don't agree that something I feel is important, then there'll be a motion and potentially a second and a discussion about something that may not want to be discussed in the public meeting, or at least be introduced as, well, why did he ask that question? And is there more? Because he just asked a very unique motion. The mechanism we have in place right now allows us to ask the superintendent and or future superintendent. And if one board member were to be asking way too much stuff, or putting a load way too much on, the current superintendent or future superintendent would work with the board chairs to work that out. Say that there's only so much things that can be done, but by taking away a board member authority to oversee the public's interest, I think you enter into a potential of chaos and a challenging board meeting. Thank you.
Definitely understand where you're coming from. And just for clarity, I think the intent of this, which may not have been met, was to make sure that all board members are aware. And so I recognize your point and your perspective, but oftentimes intent and reality don't meet. But the intent was never to create chaos. The intent was to keep everyone informed. Other questions or comments? Yes, Director McVeigh.
I just want to say I really appreciate item 13. You have done a fantastic job summarizing both verbally at the end of the meeting and through email. And it's been very helpful to keep us organized. So thank you.
Director Way.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to thank you, both chair and vice chair, for working on this great document. I know that you have to have quite a level of passion, I guess, to go through each one line by line and figure out what is going to be best to represent us in single voice, but also to continue to have, productive and healthy relationships with one another. So thank you for fine combing through this. I just have a little bit of a clarification on number 10, which is around appointing of someone to speak to the media. Can you just sort of explain a little bit on the thinking that went behind appointing one of its members or another person? And I guess my question is why are we keeping it broad, I guess, and not saying, it should be communications director, for example, that we should go to. I don't have a problem with the statement. I think I wanted a little bit of a clarification.
So I need clarity. Number 10 is not new, correct?
I'd like to add to the story if I may. For the
Okay.
history part piece.
Can I just have an answer to my question? No, that's not new, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, Director Strado.
And so this goes back to a very wonderful man, Joe Crum, who did speak for the board. And so he would be delegated authority to speak for the board, but it was always a board chair and superintendent or the designee that Superintendent Utterback had. And so it allowed the flexibility to be who was needed or who was available.
Okay. And would it be a case-by-case basis as to who that person would be given the nature of the story or the media request? I guess this is maybe a question for, I don't know, maybe Matt or.
I mean, we can all discuss that as a board because these are our processes, right? And so I think it comes down to maybe we're not ready to vote on this if that's a concern from the group of clarity. So I need some consensus. Are we all concerned with number 10? Will we want to dig deeper into it?
I guess it's not so much of a concern. I think it'd be helpful to guide me through a situation where this might come up so that I can just see how it would look like in action. So from here, it sounds like, if we get a media request, I guess what would that process look like to appoint a board member? And what I hear Director Schradel say is that it usually falls chair and vice chair to take up that responsibility. So if that's the case, that's fine with me.
Yeah. I think the challenges is the nuances of this document are where it can be very dynamic because there can be different cases for each one of these things. But I think the purpose is really for us to have a guiding kind of like guardrails to direct us in a particular direction so we just don't go off the side of the guardrails and go rogue. But I would assume that initially it would be the chair, but if there was a better representative of the group, then I would also assume that chair would be able to ascertain that there's someone better to do that at the time based on their expertise, based on their passion, whatever that is, who they represent. But I would assume it would start with the chair as the information would flow. Director McVeigh?
And to me, it's the guardrails to say that none of us without kind of board appointment have the authority to even talk to or make public statements about board work without being authorized. And so it's both.
Yeah, I agree.
This is Superintendent Utterback. You have policy BCB, which outlines the duties of the board chair. And in policy BCB, one of the duties that's listed is that the board chair represents the district and the board at official functions unless the duty is delegated by the chair or the board to another member of the board. And so in item number 10, it somewhat is a repeat of the fifth duty assigned to the superintendent via your policy.
Does that help, Director Way?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I guess in that case, then I don't know why we wouldn't just say the board chair, will be the person for this. That's all, but it's fine. I mean, we can also move on. I'm not super this isn't like a deal breaker for me. I'm just curious as to why we shouldn't just name, in number 10, the board chair shall be the board chair, or anyone that the board may appoint will be the person to make statements to the media.
Yeah, I would also add to that, as I'm reading, the policy as you're speaking, the very last sentence in the policy, specifically, again, it says policy BCB board officers. The very last section is board or district spokesperson. And it says the board may appoint one of its members or another person to make authorized statements to the public or media when the board deems that, under the circumstances, the position of the district should be articulated by a single voice.
I think that one, the last few words is very important, because superintendent does speak to the public and makes statements. And I guess I would come back and just say, we govern by policy. The operating agreement is kind of repeating what our policies are, but our policies have the details, and the operating agreement is more of a summary.
Thank you for that. Director Way, you need any other information or comments or questions?
No, I'm sufficient with what we discussed, and it's great to refer back to the specific policy so we could refer that when this comes up.
Okay. Other comments, questions?
Are we cool with number 4 in the spirit of what it's written? And if it doesn't work, we could come back and review that, Stephen?
Good question. So consensus, well, I mean, it is an action item. So what we could do is we put it on the table, and then in discussion, if we're not cool with that, the motion would not carry.
And Director Ford, I just want to add, yeah, the intention wasn't to allow discussion and make sure that the information outside is shared with other members.
Yeah. So I'm going to move us to opening the floor to a motion so that we can make a decision. Just be aware that when we open the floor to a motion, it doesn't mean that it has to pass. We've been a very, very happy group, and we often all agree, but that's not what this is about. You have a right to vote however you choose. And so once we open the floor, we will have more discussion, and then you get to vote. And it may not carry. We may have to do more work, and that is okay. Okay? All right, so I'll open the floor for a motion.
I'll do a motion because I don't want to have to do an amend.
Smart man.
Yeah, so I just want to be efficient. So because I would do that. So I do a motion to adopt with removing the operating agreement without number 4 at this time.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Motion is done by Director Schrader. Second is by Director McVeigh. Any discussion?
The only reason I'm saying number 4 is I would actually ask that it be written that it is only about making sure it's equally shared, because I do believe we have that in a different policy currently.
Okay. Other comments or discussion or?
I guess, Director Ford, is there another way you would word it, or a suggestion?
Is that question directed to
Edit?
me, to Director Schrader?
Director Schrader, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'd hate to wordsmith here on the fly. That would take, potentially that typically always causes a lot of time. But my interest would be that I'm pretty sure we already have this in policy. I just don't remember what the policy name is, but or maybe it's already in the operating agreement. Basically, what's shared with one is shared with all. I know that's how it should be. But if my only concern is that the wording, that how I interpret it, it goes beyond not sharing, but limits the board members. So if you want to have a friendly amendment, it would be that what's shared with one board member is shared with all board members.
So are you putting an amendment on the table?
I'm doing a friendly amendment, and since I'm the person who did the motion, I would accept that.
Okay. So I'm going to repeat what you said. You're doing a friendly amendment to say that what was shared with one is shared with all as the full sentence, and removing the whole thing.
And I would say that I don't like wordsmithing on the fly, because I think it could be written a lot more professional, and maybe just one more meeting might be the better choice. Versus,
Okay, so you're taking your amendment off the table then?
yes, I am.
Okay, so we're back to the original motion, which is to, Director Strado said to actually have this document as it without number 4. Okay, are we all in agreement where we're at now? What we're discussing?
So Libra, just to be Chair Ford, excuse me, it's getting late here, but so just to clarify, so does that mean that we're going to revisit 4? We're going to bring it back? I mean, we're going to tweak it and just fix the word and then bring 4 back?
No, it does not. What it means is what's on the table is we're voting for this document without 4. Now, if we want to vote to bring the document back with working through 4, that's a different discussion. Right now, what's on the table is this document without 4, period.
Okay. So all right. Thank you.
Yeah. Other discussion? Okay, so again, I'm going to repeat what we're voting for. You're voting for this document without number 4 in red to be taken into consideration for now. And we can discuss other things happening after that, but that is the current motion that we will be voting for. Are we all clear? Okay, so where's my list? Director Strado, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Perez, how do you vote? Director Perez?
So I want to bring the document back with the rewording on 4.
So the vote is just for you to have this document without 4. You can amend, but we're already in the voting process. Am I correct? Everyone just check on my Robert's rules. We've already started voting. So we would actually have to have a new motion on the table after this.
Okay.
Okay.
Support required.
You want to
okay.
I can come back to you.
Come back.
Okay.
Yeah, let me think about this.
Okay. Director Way?
No.
Okay. Director Benaloga?
No.
Director Bauer? Director Bauer?
No.
Okay. Director McVeigh?
No.
Director Perez?
Well, no.
Okay. And I'm also a no, so the motion does not carry. So now I will open up the floor for another motion regarding this document. And before I do that, let me check my Robert's rules. And I know Director Schrader, you're there. That is correct, right? That's the next step.
Technically, Robert says a motion that does not pass can't be re-asked, but until a future meeting.
So a motion that does not pass cannot be re-asked until the next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Robert,
there we are. We're good. And so what I will say is that whatever your thoughts are on this, that I recommend you think it through, write it out so that we can have a discussion next time on what your thoughts are on this document, and then we will move from there. Everybody with that?
Sounds good.
Okay. Are we all comfortable? Just give me a head nod. Superintendent Utterback.
As you are having that conversation, I will draw your attention to policy BBAA. And that is individual board members' authority and responsibilities. Within policy BBA, item number 1, request for information, it states any individual member of the board who desires that information be prepared by the administrative staff will make such a request to the superintendent. A copy of such material will be sent to each member of the board.
Okay. Good to know. I'll put that in our recap notes also. But we'll revisit this. So for now, just for clarity, the current document that we will be following is without 4 and is it 13? What number? Yeah, 13. The original document that we've always had, we're currently still following that until we bring this back. Okay. So ignore 4 and 13. All right. At this point, we are at the end of the meeting. I just want to say one thing, everyone that held in with us. For the public, we appreciate you. We appreciate your time. We know that your families are very important to you, and these decisions are important to you. And I want to close by just saying there's a lot of information for you to understand. If you could take 15 minutes every single day to review it, just 15, at the end of the week, you'll have 105 minutes that you have spent on these documents. We don't expect you to learn everything overnight. It is a lot to digest. To all of the staff, we appreciate you. We appreciate everything that you put forth. At this point, it's 8:56 and meeting is adjourned. Thank you, guys.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.